The blood-soaked telegram trembled in Zara Jameson's hands as she read the words that would forever change her life. Her husband Silas had discovered her whereabouts and was coming to claim what he believed was rightfully her life. Trinidad, Colorado, 1878. The mining town nestled against the foothills of the Rockies had seemed far enough from Missouri, far enough from the man who had promised to love her, but instead had nearly beaten her to death on more occasions than she cared to remember. She had been foolish enough to believe that distance would protect her, that the new name she had adopted would shield her from his rage. Zara folded the telegram carefully, tucking it into the pocket of her dress. She glanced at the small clock on the dresser of her rented room above the millinery shop where she worked. 3 o'clock. According to the message, Silas would arrive on tomorrow's noon train. Less than 24 hours to decide what to do, where to run next. The floorboards creaked beneath her feet as she paced the small room. Her hands unconsciously went to the scar at her temple, hidden beneath carefully arranged auburn curls. The last time Silas had found her, 2 years ago in Kansas City, he had left her for dead. She had survived only because a neighbor had heard her screams and intervened. A knock at her door made her jump, her heart racing. "Miss Zara." Mrs. Peterson, the milliner, and her landlady called softly. "There's a gentleman here to see you." Zara froze, her mind calculating the possibilities. Had Silas arrived early? Had the telegram been a cruel trick to give her false hope of preparation? "Who is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Vaughn Holloway," Mrs. Peterson replied. "Says he needs to speak with you about an urgent matter." Vaughn Holloway. The name wasn't familiar. Zara's hands twisted in her skirts as she tried to decide whether to receive this stranger or claim illness and send him away. "He says it concerns your safety, dear," Mrs. Peterson added, her voice laced with concern. Those words decided it. Zara smoothed her skirts, checked that her hair covered her scar, and opened the door. Mrs. Peterson stood with a tall man whose face was partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. He removed it as Zara appeared, revealing features weathered by sun and wind, piercing blue eyes, and a serious expression that made her stomach tighten with apprehension. "Miss Jameson," he said with a slight nod. "May I speak with you privately?" "I don't know you, sir," Zara replied cautiously. "No, madam, you don't," he agreed, "but I know about Silas." The name struck her like a physical blow. She stepped back involuntarily, clutching the doorframe for support. "I'll bring up some tea," Mrs. Peterson offered, sensing the tension and giving them an excuse for privacy. Once Mrs. Peterson had bustled away, Zara reluctantly gestured for the man to enter. She left the door ajar, propriety demanded it, and her own sense of self-preservation required it. "How do you know that name?" she demanded as soon as he crossed the threshold. Vaughn Holloway stood awkwardly in the center of her small room, his hat in his hands. He was dressed simply but neatly in a dark shirt, vest, and trousers. The gun belt around his waist was worn but well-maintained, marking him as a man accustomed to both wearing and using a firearm. "I was the deputy sheriff in Independence when your husband was arrested for nearly beating a man to death in a saloon brawl," he explained. "During the investigation, I uncovered his history of violence, including what he did to you." Zara's hand went instinctively to her temple again. "That was 3 years ago." "Yes, madam. He served 2 years for the assault. He was released 6 months ago, and now he's found me again," she whispered. "Yes, I've been tracking him since he was released. He's made it his mission to find you. But why are you involved?" "Your jurisdiction ended when he left Missouri." Vaughn Holloway's expression darkened. "My jurisdiction ended when I turned in my badge. My sister was married to a man like Silas. She wasn't as fortunate as you. She didn't survive the last time he laid hands on her. The raw pain in his voice told Zara all she needed to know about his motivations. "The telegram says he'll be on tomorrow's noon train," she said. Holloway nodded. "I arrived on today's. I've been one step behind him for weeks. I hoped to reach you before he did." "To warn me," she said, "so I can run again." "That's one option," he agreed, "but running hasn't worked so far, has it?" Zara sank onto the edge of her bed, suddenly exhausted by the prospect of packing her few belongings, purchasing another ticket to another town, starting over yet again with a new name and new lies. "What other option is there?" she asked. "Face him. End this." She looked up sharply. "You mean?" "I mean let the law handle him, once and for all," Holloway said firmly. "In some states, including Colorado Territory, a man can be imprisoned for life for repeated violent offenses." "He's never been arrested for what he did to me," Zara pointed out. "I was too afraid to press charges. I just ran." "You're not the only woman he's hurt," Holloway told her. "There are others willing to testify, and now there's me." Mrs. Peterson returned with the tea tray, interrupting their conversation. She set it down, gave Zara a concerned look, and departed with a reminder that she would be downstairs if needed. Zara poured tea with trembling hands. "Even if what you say is possible, he'll arrive tomorrow. There's no time to arrange for witnesses or a trial." "No," Holloway agreed, accepting the cup she offered. "But there's time to ensure your safety until those things can be arranged." "How?" "He'll come straight here. Mrs. Peterson told me when I first arrived that my husband might come looking for me someday, and I told her to always direct him to me." Zara's voice broke. "I was afraid he'd hurt her if she tried to protect me." Holloway set down his untouched tea. "Do you trust me, Miss Jameson?" "I don't even know you, Mr. Holloway." "Fair enough. Let me rephrase. You believe that I want to help you." Zara studied him carefully. There was something in his eyes, a mixture of determination and compassion that she found compelling. It had been so long since anyone had offered her genuine help without expecting anything in return. "Yes," she said finally. "I believe you do. Then I suggest you pack a bag with essentials. I've secured a room for you at a small hotel on the outskirts of town. It's not much, but it's clean and the owner is a friend who can be trusted. We'll move you there tonight, and I'll stay nearby to ensure your safety until we can deal with Silas properly. And if he finds me there—" Holloway's hand rested briefly on his gun. "He won't get near you, I promise you that." The quiet conviction in his voice sent a shiver down Zara's spine, not of fear, but of something she hadn't felt in a long time. "Hope. How can I repay you for this?" she asked. "By testifying against him when the time comes. By helping make sure he never hurts another woman again." Zara nodded slowly. "I'll need an hour to pack and make arrangements with Mrs. Peterson." "I'll wait downstairs," Holloway said, rising. "And Miss Jameson, pack anything of value. We may need to ensure you can stay hidden for some time." After he left, Zara moved quickly around the small room, gathering her clothing and the few precious items she had managed to keep through her years of running. A locket containing a curl of her mother's hair. A small, worn Bible. The money she had saved, sewn carefully into the lining of her winter coat. As she worked, her mind raced. Could she truly trust this stranger with her life? But what choice did she have? Silas would arrive tomorrow, and she knew with terrible certainty what would happen if he found her alone. When she descended the stairs an hour later with her carpetbag, Vaughn Holloway was waiting by the door, his expression watchful as he surveyed the quiet street outside. He took her bag without comment and offered his arm. "The hotel is a 15-minute walk," he said. "Are you ready?" Zara took a deep breath and placed her hand on his arm. The solid warmth of him was reassuring. "Yes, Mr. Holloway, I'm ready." The setting sun cast long shadows across Trinidad as they made their way through the streets. Zara was acutely aware of every passerby, every window, wondering if Silas had arrived early, if he was watching her even now. Holloway seemed to sense her anxiety, maintaining a steady pace but keeping them to side streets wherever possible. The hotel was small and unassuming, its faded sign reading Riverside Inn, despite being nowhere near the river. The lobby was empty save for an elderly man behind the desk who nodded at Holloway with recognition. "Room 6 is ready," he said, handing over a key. "As you requested, rear of the building, second floor, with the back staircase nearby." "Thank you, Tom," Holloway replied. "Remember, if anyone asks, ain't seen nobody matching her description," Tom finished. "I may be old, but my memory's just fine when it needs to be." Holloway led Zara up a narrow staircase to a small but clean room with a single window overlooking a quiet alley. There was a bed, a washstand with a pitcher and basin, a small table with a lamp, and a straight-back chair. "It's not much," he apologized, setting down her bag. "It's fine," Zara assured him. After years of running, she had learned to be grateful for any safe harbor, however humble. "I've taken the room across the hall," Holloway explained. "I'll leave you to get settled." He hesitated at the door. "Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me." After he left, Zara turned the key in the lock and sank onto the edge of the bed. For the first time since receiving the telegram, she allowed herself to truly feel the terror that had been lurking beneath her composure. Silas was coming. After all this time, all the running, all the careful hiding, he had found her again. But this time, she wasn't alone. She unpacked her few belongings, washed her face in the basin, and changed into her nightgown. Despite the early hour, exhaustion weighed on her. She extinguished the lamp and lay down, but sleep eluded her. Every creak of the old building, every voice from the street below jolted her back to full alertness. A soft knock at her door made her sit up, heart pounding. "Miss Jameson." Holloway's voice was barely audible. "Are you awake?" She wrapped her shawl around her nightgown and approached the door. "Yes. I brought you some supper. You should eat." Zara hesitated, then unlocked the door. Holloway stood in the dim hallway, holding a tray with a covered plate and a cup of what smelled like coffee. His eyes remained respectfully on her face, though she clutched the shawl tighter anyway. "Thank you," she said, accepting the tray. "Have you eaten?" "I'll get something later. Please join me," she found herself saying. I don't want to be alone right now." Surprise flickered across his features, followed by understanding. "Let me fetch my own plate. I'll be right back." When he returned, they sat at the small table by the window, the lamp turned low. The meal was simple beef stew, bread, and coffee, but Zara found she was hungrier than she'd realized. They ate in companionable silence for a while before she spoke. "Tell me about your sister," she said softly. Holloway's hand stilled, his spoon halfway to his mouth. "Her name was Charlotte," he said after a moment. "She was younger than me by 5 years, smartest person I ever knew. Could have been a school teacher or even gone to college back east if she'd had the chance. What happened to her? She married young. Too young. Thomas Blackburn seemed like a decent man at first, hardworking, respectful, but after they married, he changed. Or maybe he just stopped hiding who he really was." Holloway's jaw tightened. "It started small, controlling what she wore, who she spoke to. Then came the criticism, telling her she was worthless, stupid. Then the hitting." Zara nodded. She knew this progression all too well. "I didn't know how bad it was until it was too late," he continued. "Charlotte was proud. She hid the bruises, made excuses for his behavior. By the time I realized what was happening and tried to help her leave, she was too afraid. He'd convinced her she couldn't survive without him." His voice dropped. 3 days after I confronted him, he beat her so badly she died before the doctor could even be summoned. I'm so sorry, Zara whispered. I was a deputy by then. I arrested him myself, saw him tried and hanged. Holloway's eyes met hers across the table. But it didn't bring Charlotte back, and it didn't stop other men like him. That's when I decided to make it my purpose to help women escape men like Thomas Blackburn, like Silas Jameson. Is that why you're no longer a deputy? Partly. The law has its limitations. Sometimes justice requires flexibility. The implication hung in the air between them. Zara studied him with new understanding. How many women have you helped? 17, including you, he answered without hesitation. And the men they were running from? Holloway held her gaze steadily. Some were arrested. Some disappeared. Some decided that living was more important than pursuing vengeance. Zara shivered. There was something dangerous about this man, but she realized that his danger was not directed at her. Rather, it served as a shield between her and those who would harm her. What will happen tomorrow? She asked. I'll meet Silas at the station. He doesn't know me, but I'll recognize him. I'll follow him, see where he goes and what he does. Once I understand his intentions clearly, I'll decide the best course of action. And if he comes looking for me at the millinery shop, Mrs. Peterson will tell him you left suddenly, destination unknown. If he becomes threatening, the sheriff has been alerted to watch the shop. Zara raised an eyebrow. You've spoken with the sheriff. I made some inquiries. Sheriff Wilson has a reputation as a fair man who takes violence against women seriously. If necessary, we'll involve him officially. For now, I thought you might prefer discretion. Yes, Zara agreed. I've spent so long hiding who I really am, what happened to me. The shame of it, you have nothing to be ashamed of, Holloway interrupted, his voice fierce. Nothing. The shame belongs entirely to the man who broke his vows to protect you. Tears sprang unexpectedly to Zara's eyes. How long had it been since someone had absolved her of blame for her own victimization? Silas had been so skilled at making her believe she deserved his rage, his fists, his cruelty. Holloway cleared his throat, apparently embarrassed by his own vehemence. It's getting late. You should try to rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. He gathered their dishes onto the tray and stood. At the door, he paused. I'll be right across the hall, he said. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to knock. After he left, Zara returned to bed, but sleep remained elusive. She tossed and turned, her mind replaying every encounter with Silas, every escape, every moment of terror. Sometime past midnight, she finally drifted into a restless slumber, only to be jerked awake by a nightmare in which Silas had found her, his hands around her throat. She sat up gasping, sweat-soaked and trembling. The room was dark except for a sliver of moonlight coming through the curtains. For a moment she was disoriented, unsure of where she was. Then memory returned. The hotel, Holloway across the hall, Silas arriving tomorrow. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Zara froze, listening intently. Another creak closer to her door. Her heart hammered so loudly she was certain it could be heard throughout the building. Could Silas have arrived early, found her already? She slipped silently from the bed and reached for the water pitcher on the washstand, the only potential weapon in the room. The footsteps stopped directly outside her door. She held her breath, gripping the pitcher with white-knuckled hands. A soft scratch at the door, barely audible. Then Vaughn Holloway's whisper. Miss Jameson, are you awake? Relief flooded through her so intensely that her knees nearly buckled. She set down the pitcher and moved to the door. Yes, she whispered back. I heard a sound from your room. Are you all right? A nightmare, she admitted. I'm sorry if I disturbed you. A pause. May I come in for a moment, just to speak with you? Propriety dictated that she refuse. A gentleman in her room at this hour with her in her nightgown would be scandalous. But propriety seemed a distant concern compared to the terror that still lingered from her dream. She unlocked the door and opened it just wide enough for him to enter, then immediately retreated to wrap her shawl around her shoulders. Holloway stepped inside, still fully dressed despite the late hour. Had he not been to bed at all, "I apologize for the intrusion," he said, keeping his voice low. "But I've been thinking about tomorrow, and I believe we need to adjust our plan." "What's wrong?" "Nothing specific. Call it instinct. I'd prefer not to leave you alone here while I track Sela's." "What do you suggest?" "There's a small hunting cabin about 3 miles outside of town. It belongs to Tom's nephew, but it's unoccupied now. It's remote, difficult to find unless you know where to look." "I think you'd be safer there until this is resolved." Zara considered this. The idea of being even more isolated was both frightening and appealing. "When would we leave?" "Before dawn. The fewer people who see us departing, the better." She nodded slowly. "All right, I'll be ready." Instead of leaving immediately as she expected, Holloway hesitated. "There's something else you should know," he said. "About Sela's." A cold dread settled in Zara's stomach. "What is it?" "In the 2 years since you last saw him, his reputation for violence has grown. There are warrants for his arrest in 3 states now. He's killed at least 2 men that I know of." Zara sank onto the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly unable to support her. "He's going to kill me if he finds me," she said, voicing the fear that had lived inside her for years. "I won't let that happen." Holloway moved closer, then knelt before her so they were eye to eye. "Zara, Miss Jameson, I give you my word, he will not hurt you again." Perhaps it was the lateness of the hour, or the lingering effects of her nightmare, or simply the intensity of his gaze, but Zara found herself believing him completely. This man, this stranger who had appeared in her life mere hours ago, had somehow become her only hope of survival. "Thank you," she whispered. He reached out hesitantly, then seemed to think better of it and withdrew his hand. "Try to get some rest. I'll wake you when it's time to leave." After he left, Zara lay back down, but this time she left the lamp burning low. Somehow, knowing that Vaughn Holloway was keeping watch just across the hall, she was able to close her eyes and surrender to sleep. True to his word, Holloway woke her before dawn with a gentle knock. Zara dressed quickly in her sturdiest clothes, a simple blouse, wool skirt, and sturdy boots. She pinned her hair up efficiently and repacked her carpet bag with only the most essential items. The hotel was silent as they descended the back stairs. Tom waited for them in the kitchen, a bundle of food and 2 canteens prepared. "My nephew stocked the cabin with firewood and some basic supplies last hunting season," he told them as he handed the provisions to Holloway. "Should be enough to last you a few days." "We're grateful for your help, Tom," Holloway said. "Just see the lady stays safe," Tom replied with a respectful nod to Zara. "I've seen what men like her husband can do, lost my own daughter that way." Outside, 2 horses waited in the alley behind the hotel. Zara eyed them with trepidation. It had been years since she had ridden. "The sorrel mare is gentle," Holloway assured her, helping her mount. "She'll follow my gelding without much guidance." The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten as they rode out of town. Holloway led them away from the main roads, following game trails and dry creek beds that would leave minimal tracks. Zara tried to focus on the practical aspects of their journey, sitting correctly in the saddle, watching for low branches rather than dwelling on the man they were fleeing or the uncertain future ahead. The sun had fully risen by the time they reached the cabin, a small, sturdy structure nestled in a grove of pines. A nearby stream provided water, and the surrounding forest offered both protection and sustenance in the form of game. Holloway dismounted and helped Zara down, his hands strong and sure at her waist. They lingered there a moment longer than necessary, and she found herself studying his face in the morning light. The severity she had noticed yesterday was softened somehow, his blue eyes warmer as they met hers. He cleared his throat and stepped back. "Let's get you settled inside." The cabin was rustic but clean, with a stone fireplace, a rough-hewn table and chairs, a small cupboard stocked with basic provisions, and a narrow bed in the corner. A bearskin rug covered part of the plank floor, adding a touch of warmth to the otherwise Spartan accommodations. "It's not what you're used to, I'm sure," Holloway said apologetically as he set her bag on the table. "Mr. Holloway, you have a strange notion of what I'm used to," Zara replied with a small smile. "I grew up on a small farm in Missouri. This cabin is practically luxurious compared to some places I've stayed while running from Sela's." He looked surprised, then offered a rare smile that transformed his face. "I stand corrected, Miss Jameson. Under the circumstances, I think you should call me Zara. Then I'm Vaughn." He began building a fire in the hearth. "The nights get cold up here, even in summer." As the flames caught and grew, Zara unpacked the food Tom had provided: bread, cheese, dried meat, and apples. They shared a simple breakfast, the silence between them comfortable rather than awkward. "What happens now?" Zara asked finally, watching Vaughn clean his gun with practiced efficiency. "I need to return to town," he said. "Sela's will arrive on the noon train. I want to see what he does, who he talks to. The more information I have, the better prepared we'll be." Fear flickered through her. "You're leaving me here alone, only for a few hours. No one knows about this cabin except Tom, his nephew, and us. You'll be safer here than anywhere in town." He must have seen the doubt in her eyes because he added, "I'll teach you how to use this before I go." He held up a small revolver she hadn't noticed before. Zara had never fired a gun in her life. The thought of doing so, even to protect herself, made her stomach clench. But she nodded. "All right." Outside, Vaughn set up empty cans on a fallen log about 20 feet from the cabin. He showed Zara how to load the revolver, how to aim, how to account for the kickback. Her first shot went wide, the second and third as well. But on the fourth attempt, she clipped the edge of a can, sending it spinning. "Good," Vaughn said approvingly. "Again." By the time they'd finished the impromptu shooting lesson, Zara had hit the target more often than she'd missed. Her hands were steady now as she accepted the loaded gun from Vaughn. "Keep it with you at all times," he instructed. "And remember, if you have to use it, don't hesitate. Shoot to stop the threat." The gravity of his words settled over her. This was real. Sela's was coming, and she might have to defend herself with lethal force. "I understand," she said quietly. Vaughn checked his pocket watch. "I need to go if I'm going to be at the station when the train arrives." He hesitated, then added, "Bar the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. I'll call out so you know it's me." "What should I do until you return?" "Rest. Keep the fire going. There are books in the cupboard, I believe." He seemed reluctant to leave, his eyes scanning the surrounding forest as if assessing threats one final time. "I'll be fine," Zara assured him with more confidence than she felt. "Go." He mounted his horse, tipped his hat to her, and rode away. Zara watched until he disappeared among the trees, then went inside and barred the door as instructed. The revolver was a comforting weight in her pocket as she moved around the small cabin, examining her temporary sanctuary more closely. The books in the cupboard were an eclectic mix: a Bible, a volume of Shakespeare's sonnets, a treatise on hunting and trapping, and a well-worn copy of Ivanhoe. Zara selected the sonnets and settled in the single comfortable chair by the fire to read, but concentration proved difficult. Her mind kept returning to Vaughn riding into Trinidad, to Silas stepping off the train, to the inevitable confrontation between the two men. What if Silas overpowered Vaughn? What if he followed him back to the cabin? What if this very moment was just a brief respite before violence found her again? To distract herself, she decided to prepare a proper meal for Vaughn's return. The cupboard yielded dried beans, salt pork, and cornmeal. With water from the stream and herbs growing outside the cabin, she could make a decent stew and cornbread. The simple task of cooking soothed her nerves, giving her hands something to do besides tremble, and her mind something to focus on besides fear. The sun was low in the sky by the time Zara heard hoofbeats approaching. She doused the lamp, moved away from the windows, and took the revolver from her pocket, holding it ready as Vaughn had shown her. "Zara," his voice called from outside. "It's Vaughn." Relief flooded through her. She set the gun aside and hurried to unbar the door. Vaughn stood on the threshold, his expression grim, a bruise darkening his left cheekbone. "What happened?" she gasped, reaching instinctively toward his injured face before catching herself. "Your husband is every bit as charming as advertised," Vaughn said dryly, stepping inside. He sniffed appreciatively. "Something smells good, stew and cornbread, but never mind that, tell me what happened." Vaughn removed his hat and coat, sinking into a chair with a tired sigh. "Silas arrived as expected, went straight to the hotel where the stagecoach office is located. Asked about you by both your married name and your maiden name. He knows I might be using Baker again," Zara said, her father's surname, abandoned when she married Silas. "Yes, when the hotel clerk couldn't help him, he tried the sheriff's office. Told quite a tale about his poor disturbed wife who had run away from home during a bout of illness. Said he was worried for your safety." Zara's hands clenched into fists, and the sheriff believed him. Not entirely. Wilson's a better lawman than that. He told Silas he hadn't seen anyone matching your description but would keep an eye out. Vaughn touched his bruised cheek gingerly. "After that, Silas started making the rounds of the saloons. That's where I ran into him. Deliberately. Yes. I wanted to see what kind of man he is now, how he operates. I posed as a drifter, struck up a conversation. He was buying drinks for anyone who would listen to his sad story about his missing wife. And the bruise," Vaughn's expression hardened. "When I suggested that perhaps his wife had good reason to leave, he took exception to the comment, threw a punch before I was fully prepared for it." "I'm so sorry," Zara said, distressed that Vaughn had been hurt on her behalf. "Don't be. It was worth it to confirm my suspicions about him." "He's dangerous, Zara. More dangerous than even I expected. He's carrying 2 guns and a knife that I could see, and there's a coldness in his eyes when he speaks about you." Vaughn trailed off, perhaps not wanting to frighten her further. "What else?" she pressed. "There's something you're not telling me." Vaughn hesitated, then said, "He's not alone. There's another man with him. They're pretending not to know each other, but I saw them exchange signals. Professional gunmen, if I had to guess." Zara sank into the chair opposite him, her legs suddenly weak. "He hired someone to help hunt me down, it appears so, which changes the situation significantly." "What do we do now?" Vaughn ran a hand through his hair, his exhaustion evident. "Tonight we eat and rest. Tomorrow I need to send a telegram. I have a colleague in Denver who can help us. In the meantime, we stay here where it's safe." Zara nodded, trying to process this new information. The idea that Silas had hired a gunman to help find her was terrifying, but not entirely surprising. Silas had always been willing to go to extreme lengths to maintain control over her. She served the stew and cornbread on mismatched plates she'd found in the cupboard. They ate in silence for a while, both lost in their own thoughts. "This is delicious," Vaughn said eventually. "Thank you. It's the least I can do." You don't owe me anything, Zara, don't I? You're risking your life to protect a woman you've never met before yesterday. Vaughn set down his spoon, his blue eyes intense as they met hers across the table. I told you why I'm doing this. It's not about debt or obligation. No, she agreed softly. It's about your sister, about Charlotte. Partly. He seemed to struggle with his next words. But it's also about you. There's something. I can't explain it, but from the moment I learned about you, I felt responsible for your safety. Not out of duty, but because something inside me couldn't bear the thought of you suffering anymore. The naked honesty in his voice touched something deep inside Zara. For so long, she had been alone with her fear and pain. To have someone not only understand but actively stand against the source of her suffering was overwhelming. Why did you stay with him? Vaughn asked suddenly. Before you ran the first time, what kept you there? It was a question no one had ever asked her before. Most people simply assumed she had been too afraid or too weak to leave. At first, I believed I could fix him, she said slowly. Silas wasn't always cruel. When we first married, there were good days, many of them. He could be charming, generous even. The violence came later and gradually. By the time I realized what was happening, I was isolated from my family, from friends. And then there was the baby. Baby. Vaughn's expression registered surprise. Zara's hand went unconsciously to her abdomen. I lost it. After Silas pushed me down the stairs during an argument, the doctor said I might never have another. The pain of that loss, now 3 years in the past, still felt fresh sometimes. The tiny life that had been growing inside her, snuffed out by the same hands that had pledged to protect her. I left the first time right after that, she continued. But he found me, promised he would change, that he was sick with grief over the baby. And I believed him because I wanted to. Because despite everything, some part of me still loved the man I thought he could be. And the second time you left was after he nearly killed me for speaking to a male customer in my father's store. He accused me of infidelity, of trying to shame him. The neighbor who intervened saved my life. While Silas was arrested for the assault, I fled. I've been running ever since. Vaughn reached across the table and took her hand in his. His palm was calloused but warm. You won't have to run anymore, I promise you that. Something in the way he said it sent a shiver through Zara. What are you planning to do? Whatever's necessary to make sure you're safe. He squeezed her hand gently, then released it. We should get some rest. Tomorrow will be another long day. They cleared the dishes together, working side by side in the small space of the cabin with a domesticity that felt strangely natural. Afterward came the awkward realization that there was only one bed. I'll sleep by the fire, Vaughn said immediately. Zara wanted to protest. The floor was hard, and he was already bruised and exhausted from his confrontation with Silas, but propriety held her tongue. Instead, she helped him arrange blankets into a makeshift pallet near the hearth. Good night, Vaughn, she said softly, retreating to the narrow bed. Good night, Zara, he replied, his voice equally soft in the dimness of the cabin. Sleep well. But sleep proved elusive for Zara. She lay awake, listening to Vaughn's steady breathing across the room, her mind replaying their conversation. She had told him things she had never spoken aloud to anyone about the baby, about her conflicted feelings for Silas, about her shame and fear. And he had listened without judgment, with a compassion that made her feel truly seen for the first time in years. In the darkness of the cabin, with the fire burning low and the sounds of the forest all around them, Zara admitted to herself what she had been trying to deny since Vaughn Holloway had first appeared at her door. She was developing feelings for him. Inappropriate, inconvenient, possibly dangerous feelings for the man who had pledged to protect her. Morning came too soon, gray light filtering through the cabin's small windows. Zara opened her eyes to find Vaughn already awake, rebuilding the fire. He looked up as she stirred. "Good morning," he said. "Did you sleep?" "Some," she admitted, sitting up and smoothing her hair. "You." "Enough." He gestured to the coffee pot he'd set near the fire. "It should be ready soon." They shared a simple breakfast of the previous night's leftover cornbread, toasted over the fire and spread with honey Vaughn had found in the cupboard. The domesticity of the scene struck Zara again, how easy it was to move around each other in the small space, how their conversation flowed without effort. "I need to go into town to send that telegram," Vaughn said as they cleared away the breakfast things. "And to see what Silas and his companion are doing. Is it safe for you to go? Silas has seen you now, confronted you. He saw a drifter who made an impertinent comment. He doesn't know who I really am or why I'm here." Still, Zara worried. "Be careful, please." Vaughn's expression softened. "I will." He checked his gun and tucked it into his holster. "Keep the door barred. I should be back by mid-afternoon." After he left, Zara found herself at loose ends. She tidied the already neat cabin, reorganized the cupboard, and washed their few dishes in water heated over the fire. To distract herself from worry, she began reading Ivanhoe, but found herself unable to concentrate on the story. Every sound from outside, the wind in the pines, a bird call, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush, made her tense, reaching for the revolver that she kept close at hand. The sun was past its zenith when Zara heard hoofbeats approaching. She moved away from the windows, revolver ready, and waited. "Zara, it's Vaughn." She rushed to unbar the door, relief flooding through her at the sight of him safe and whole. But her relief turned quickly to concern as she took in his expression, tense, troubled. "What's wrong?" she asked as he stepped inside. "Silas knows you're in the area," Vaughn said without preamble. "He found Mrs. Peterson at the millinery shop. She tried to stick to our story that you had left town suddenly, but he didn't believe her. He became insistent." Zara's hand went to her mouth. "Did he hurt her?" "No. A customer came in and he backed off. But he's convinced you're still in Trinidad, and he's methodically searching every boarding house, hotel, and private residence that might take in a single woman." Vaughn ran a hand through his hair. "The man with him is definitely a hired gun. Name's Jeb Harker. Has a reputation for tracking down runaway wives and returning them to their husbands." The implication made Zara shudder. "And the telegram your colleague in Denver sent and received, he'll be here tomorrow." Vaughn hesitated. "Zara, there's something else. Something I discovered about Silas." "What is it?" "There's a warrant for his arrest in Kansas, for murder. A woman named Eliza Connors." The name struck Zara like a physical blow. "Eliza, but she was. She helped me escape from him the last time. She gave me money for the train ticket." "I'm sorry," Vaughn said gently. "According to what I learned, she was found dead in her home 2 months ago, beaten and strangled. Witnesses placed Silas in town around the same time." Zara sank onto a chair, her legs unable to support her. "Eliza. Kind, brave Eliza who had risked everything to help her. Dead because of that kindness. It's my fault," she whispered. "If I hadn't involved her, no," Vaughn said firmly, kneeling before her and taking her hands in his. "Listen to me, Zara. This is not your fault. The only person responsible for Eliza Connor's death is Silas, just as the only person responsible for what happened to you is Silas." Tears filled Zara's eyes, spilling over onto her cheeks. Vaughn reached up to brush them away, his touch impossibly gentle. "He won't stop," she said brokenly. "Not until he finds me, not until I'm dead like Eliza." "That won't happen," Vaughn promised, his voice fierce. "I won't let it happen." In that moment, with his face so close to hers, his eyes burning with a protective intensity that took her breath away, Zara did something she had not planned. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was a brief kiss, born of desperation and gratitude and something deeper that she wasn't ready to name. Vaughn froze for an instant, then responded with a gentleness that made her heart ache. When they parted, his eyes were wide with surprise and something else, desire, carefully contained. "Zara," he began, his voice rough. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have. Don't apologize." His hand cradled her cheek, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with exquisite care. "I've wanted to do that since I first saw you, but the timing, the circumstances are all wrong," she finished for him. "I know." He smiled sadly. "When this is over, when you're safe, then we can talk about whatever this is between us." She nodded, acknowledging the wisdom in his words even as her heart protested the delay. They had known each other barely 2 days, yet she felt connected to Vaughn Holloway in a way she had never experienced before, not even with Silas in the early days of their courtship. They spent the remainder of the afternoon in a state of heightened awareness, both of the danger outside and the new tension between them. Vaughn insisted on teaching Zara more about the revolver, having her practice drawing and aiming quickly. They reviewed what she should do if Silas somehow found the cabin while Vaughn was away, where to hide, how to escape, which direction to run to reach the nearest neighbor. As dusk approached, Vaughn built up the fire and prepared a simple meal from their dwindling supplies. They ate quietly, both lost in thought. "Your colleague," Zara said finally, "the one coming from Denver, who is he?" "His name is Marcus Reed. We served together during the war. Afterward, he became a Pinkerton detective." Vaughn hesitated. "He specializes in cases involving violent husbands and missing wives. Like me." "Yes. He's bringing documentation of the Kansas murder warrant. With that, we can have Silas arrested legally. No confrontation necessary." Zara wanted to believe it could be that simple, but experience had taught her that nothing involving Silas was ever straightforward. "And if he resists arrest," Vaughn's expression hardened, "then he'll face the consequences of that decision." The night was cooler than the previous one, the fire necessary for comfort as well as cooking. After they had cleared away the supper dishes, Zara found herself reluctant to retreat to the bed, to put distance between herself and Vaughn. Instead, she sat near the fire, watching the flames dance and trying not to think about what tomorrow might bring. Vaughn joined her, sitting close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. "Tell me about your life," he said suddenly. "Before Silas, who were you then?" The question caught Zara by surprise. It had been so long since she had thought of herself as anything other than a victim, a fugitive. "I was a farmer's daughter," she said slowly. "My father grew corn and wheat. My mother kept a vegetable garden and chickens. We weren't rich, but we never went hungry. Brothers, sisters, 2 brothers, both older. They're in California now. Gold fever took them west 5 years ago." She smiled at the memory. "I was the one who loved books. I'd save every penny to buy a new one from the traveling peddler who came through twice a year. What did you dream of becoming? A teacher, maybe, or a writer?" Dreams so long buried she had almost forgotten them. "I was 16 when I met Silas. He was 22, handsome, confident. He worked for the railroad and had traveled to places I'd only read about. I was flattered by his attention. He saw your worth," Vaughn said softly, "your brightness, perhaps, or perhaps he just saw someone he could mold to his liking, someone trusting enough to control." She shook her head. "It doesn't matter now. That girl is gone." "I don't believe that," Vaughn said, turning to face her fully. "I see her in you still, in your courage, your resilience, your capacity for kindness despite everything that's been done to you." His words touched something deep inside her, a part of herself she had thought lost forever. "You see too much, Vaughn Holloway." "I see you," he said simply, "and what I see is beautiful." Without conscious thought, Zara leaned toward him. This time when their lips met, there was no hesitation on either side. His arms encircled her, drawing her closer, and she went willingly, seeking the warmth and safety he offered. The kiss deepened, awakening sensations Zara had long forgotten: desire, yes, but also tenderness, a sweet ache of connection that brought tears to her eyes. When they finally parted, both breathless, Vaughn rested his forehead against hers. "We should stop," he whispered, though his arms remained around her. "Why?" she asked, her heart pounding. "Because it's improper, because we barely know each other, because I don't want to take advantage of your vulnerability, of this situation." She pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. "I'm not some fragile creature who doesn't know her own mind, Vaughn. What I feel for you, it may have come suddenly, but it's real. And in a world where so little has felt safe or good to me for so long, I don't want to deny myself this. Us." His expression softened. "Are you sure?" In answer, Zara kissed him again, letting her actions speak what words could not fully express. This time, Vaughn didn't hold back. His hands tangled in her hair as he returned her kiss with an intensity that left no doubt about his own feelings. They moved to the bed together, each touch, each caress a discovery. Vaughn was endlessly gentle, seeking her consent at every step, his reverence for her body a revelation after Silas's brutality. And when they joined, it was with a sense of rightness, of coming home that Zara had never experienced before. Afterward, lying in his arms with the fire burning low and the sounds of the night forest all around them, Zara felt a peace she had thought forever beyond her reach. Whatever tomorrow brought, she had this moment, this connection, this man who had seen her at her most broken and still found her beautiful. "Sleep," Vaughn murmured, his lips against her hair. "I'll keep you safe." And for the first time in years, Zara slept deeply and without fear. Morning arrived with pale sunlight filtering through the cabin windows. Zara woke slowly, aware first of the warmth surrounding her, then of Vaughn's steady heartbeat beneath her cheek. For a moment, she allowed herself to simply experience the contentment of lying in his arms, of being held with such care. But reality intruded all too quickly. Today, Vaughn's colleague would arrive. Today, they would confront Silas with the murder warrant. Today, one way or another, her long nightmare might finally end. As if sensing her thoughts, Vaughn stirred beside her. "Good morning," he said, his voice rough with sleep. "Good morning," she replied, looking up at him with a mixture of shyness and newfound intimacy. His eyes searched her face. "Any regrets?" "None," she assured him, and it was true. Whatever happened next, she would cherish what they had shared. They dressed and prepared breakfast together, moving around the small cabin with an ease that spoke of deeper connection than their brief acquaintance should allow. Neither spoke of what lay ahead, but it hung in the air between them, the knowledge that this peaceful interlude was temporary, that danger waited just beyond the safety of their sanctuary. "Marcus should arrive on the morning train," Vaughn said finally, as they cleared away the breakfast things. "I need to meet him, bring him up to date on the situation." The thought of Vaughn returning to town, where Silas and his hired gun were actively searching, filled Zara with dread. "Is it safe?" "Safer than yesterday. They'll be looking for you, not for me. Silas saw your face. He hit you. He saw a drifter who annoyed him in a saloon, one face among dozens he encountered yesterday." Vaughn took her hands in his. "I'll be careful, I promise." She nodded, knowing there was no alternative. They needed the murder warrant that Marcus was bringing. They needed the legal authority to end Silas's pursuit once and for all. "I'll be back before midday," Vaughn promised, gathering his hat and gun belt. "Bar the door behind me. Keep the revolver close." After he left, Zara moved mechanically through the cabin, straightening things that were already in order. The revolver was a constant presence, either in her hand or within easy reach. Every sound from outside made her tense, her eyes darting to the windows and door. To occupy her mind, she tried to imagine what would happen after Silas was arrested. Would she stay in Trinidad? Return to Missouri? The possibilities seemed both dizzying and distant, hard to grasp with the immediate threat still looming. And what of Vaughn? The connection between them was undeniable, their shared night a testament to feelings that had developed with startling speed and intensity. But once her safety was secured, would he move on to help another woman in danger? Was that his pattern to swoop in, protect, perhaps even care for a time, then continue his solitary mission? The questions circled in her mind as the morning hours crept by. The sun climbed higher, approaching the midday position Vaughn had mentioned for his return. Zara found herself checking the small clock on the mantelpiece with increasing frequency, her anxiety growing as the hands moved past noon with no sign of him. 1 o'clock came and went. Then 2. Zara paced the cabin, scenarios running through her mind, each more terrifying than the last. Had Silas recognized Vaughn after all? Had he and his hired gun harker somehow discovered Vaughn's connection to her? Was Vaughn lying injured somewhere or worse by 3 o'clock? Her fear had crystallized into a terrible certainty. Something had gone very wrong. Vaughn would never leave her waiting this long unless he was prevented from returning, which meant he was either captured or dead. The thought galvanized her. She couldn't sit passively in the cabin, waiting for a rescue that might never come. If Vaughn was in danger because of her, she had to do something. She had to find out what had happened. Quickly, Zara gathered what she would need: the revolver, of course, and a small bag with the money she had sewn into her coat lining. She changed into her sturdiest clothes and pulled her hair back severely, fixing her hat with extra pins. Then, steeling herself, she unbarred the door and stepped outside. The afternoon was warm, the forest quiet around her. Vaughn had taken his horse, but the sorrel mare remained in the small lean-to beside the cabin. Zara approached the animal cautiously. It had been years since she had saddled a horse herself. But the knowledge came back as she worked, her hands remembering what her mind had forgotten. The ride into Trinidad took longer than it had with Vaughn leading. Zara stuck to the game trails he had shown her, constantly looking over her shoulder, alert for any sign of pursuit. By the time the town came into view, the sun was beginning to lower in the western sky. She approached cautiously, keeping to the outskirts, trying to formulate a plan. She couldn't simply ride openly into town. Silas might see her. She needed information first. Where was Vaughn? Had his friend Marcus arrived? What had happened at the train station? The answer came in the form of Tom's nephew, the owner of the cabin, who was chopping wood behind a small house on the edge of town. He looked up in surprise as Zara approached, leading the mare on foot. "Miss Jameson," he said, recognition dawning on his weathered face. "Uncle Tom told me you were staying at my cabin. Is everything all right? Mr. Holloway went to town this morning to meet a friend," Zara explained quickly. "He hasn't returned. I'm worried something's happened to him." The man, Walter, was his name. Zara suddenly remembered, frowned. "There was some trouble in town today. Shooting at the hotel. I don't know details, but folks are saying 2 men were involved, strangers." Zara's heart seemed to stop in her chest. Was anyone hurt? Don't rightly know. Sheriff took the injured to Doc Miller's place and cleared everyone else out. Walter studied her face. "You think your friend was involved?" "I need to find out," Zara said, her voice steadier than she felt. Is there somewhere I can leave my horse? And she hesitated. Would you happen to have any clothes I could borrow? A man's shirt and hat, perhaps. I need to move through town without being recognized. Understanding dawned in Walter's eyes. You're hiding from someone, that's why you're at the cabin. Yes, please, I don't have much time. Walter nodded once. My wife's away visiting her sister. Come inside, we'll find you something. 15 minutes later, Zara emerged from Walter's house transformed. Her hair was tucked up under a battered slouch hat, her figure concealed beneath a loose shirt and vest. From a distance, in the fading light, she might pass for a slender young man. Head straight to Doc Miller's, Walter advised. It's 3 blocks east, white house with green shutters. If your friend was hurt in the shooting, that's where he'll be. Zara thanked him and set off, keeping her head down, her pace purposeful but unhurried. The streets were busier than usual. Townspeople gathered in small clusters, talking in low voices about the incident at the hotel. She caught snatches of conversation as she passed. Never seen shooting like that. One of them was a professional for sure. Sheriff's got them both at the docks, under guard. Both. The word gave Zara hope. If 2 men were injured and in custody, perhaps Vaughn was one of them, wounded but alive. The alternative, that he was not among those being discussed, was too terrible to contemplate. Doc Miller's house was easy to find, with its distinctive green shutters and the small shingle beside the door announcing his profession. What was less expected was the sheriff's deputy standing guard on the porch, rifle in hand. Zara approached cautiously, trying to affect a masculine stride and posture. "Evening," she said, keeping her voice low. "Heard there was trouble at the hotel. My boss sent me to check if anyone needs help." The deputy, a young man with a patchy beard, shook his head. "Sheriff's got everything under control. Doc's tending the wounded now." "Who's your boss?" "Tom at the Riverside Inn," Zara improvised. "Thought one of our guests might be involved." "Nah, it was 2 strangers. One of them a real tough customer named Harker. The other one a lawman from Kansas, here with a murder warrant." The deputy seemed eager to share what he knew. "They got into it at the hotel when the Kansas man tried to serve the warrant on Harker's employer." Zara's pulse quickened. A lawman from Kansas with a murder warrant that had to be Marcus Reed, Vaughn's friend. But where was Vaughn himself? "Anyone else hurt?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Just those 2. Sheriff's waiting for them to wake up so he can sort out what happened." So both men were unconscious but alive. Relief mingled with confusion in Zara's mind. If Marcus and Harker had shot each other, where was Vaughn? And where was Silas? Before she could figure out how to ask without raising suspicion, the door behind the deputy opened. Sheriff Wilson himself stepped out onto the porch, looking tired and grim. "Jenkins, I told you to keep people away from here," he said to the deputy. "Just checking if you need anything, Sheriff," Zara said quickly, lowering the brim of her hat to further obscure her face. The sheriff studied her for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Do I know you, boy?" "No, sir. Just helping out at the Riverside Inn." Wilson seemed about to question her further when a commotion from inside the house drew his attention. "Stay here, Jenkins," he ordered, turning back inside. Zara's mind raced. She needed to know if Vaughn was inside that house, injured or perhaps guarding the prisoners. But how could she get past the deputy? The answer came unexpectedly from across the street. A woman's scream pierced the evening air, followed by shouts and the sound of breaking glass. The deputy's head snapped toward the disturbance. "Stay here," he told Zara, then hurried down the steps and across the street toward the commotion. It was the opportunity Zara needed. As soon as the deputy was out of sight, she slipped onto the porch and through the front door of the doctor's house. The entry hall was empty, but voices came from a room to the right, the sheriff's deep tones and another man's, their words indistinct. To the left, a door stood slightly ajar, revealing what appeared to be an examination room. Zara moved quietly toward it, her heart pounding so loudly she was certain it would give her away. Peering through the crack in the door, she saw two men lying on separate examination tables. One was a stranger, a hard-faced man with a bandage around his shoulder, his hands shackled to the table frame. Harker, she presumed. The other was indeed Marcus Raid, as she had guessed from the deputy's description, a lean man with graying hair and a badge pinned to his blood-stained shirt. But there was no sign of Vaughn, or Silas. A noise behind her made Zara turn, too late to hide. A young woman, the doctor's assistant or perhaps his daughter, stood in the hallway, staring at Zara with surprise. "You shouldn't be in here," the woman said. "The sheriff gave orders, please," Zara interrupted, abandoning her masculine pretense. "I'm looking for someone. A man named Vaughn Holloway. Do you know if he was brought in with the others?" The woman's expression changed from suspicion to concern. "Are you a relative, a friend?" "Please, I need to know if he's all right." After a moment's hesitation, the woman said, "No one by that name was brought in. Just Mr. Reed and the other man, Harker." Relief and fear warred in Zara's mind. If Vaughn wasn't here, where was he? And why had he not returned to the cabin? "The man who was with Harker," Zara asked urgently. "Tall, dark-haired, with a scar on his right cheek. Was he brought in?" The woman shook her head. "No, just these two, but—" She hesitated, lowering her voice. "I overheard the sheriff talking. The other man, the one who employed Harker, he escaped during the shooting. The sheriff has men searching for him now. Silas was free." The knowledge hit Zara like a physical blow. If he had escaped and Vaughn was missing. "Thank you," she said to the woman, already turning to leave. "I need to go." "Wait," the woman called after her. "Who should I tell Mr. Reed was looking for him when he wakes up?" But Zara was already moving, slipping back out the front door just as the deputy was returning from across the street. She hurried away, head down, mind racing. If Silas had escaped and Vaughn was missing, the most likely explanation was that Silas had somehow captured Vaughn. Perhaps he had recognized him from their saloon encounter after all. Perhaps he had discovered Vaughn's connection to her. Either way, Vaughn was in danger, grave danger. But where would Silas take him? And what was his ultimate plan? The answer came to Zara with sudden, terrible clarity. Silas would use Vaughn as bait. He would hurt Vaughn, perhaps kill him to draw her out of hiding. It was exactly the kind of cruel calculation Silas would make. The question remained, where? Where in Trinidad would Silas feel secure enough to hold a prisoner? Where would he expect Zara to come looking? As she hurried through the darkening streets, Zara mentally reviewed what she knew about Silas's movements since arriving in town. He had stayed at the hotel near the stagecoach office. He had visited the sheriff, the millinery shop, several saloons. None of those places would serve his current purpose. Then she remembered something Vaughn had mentioned. Silas and Harker had been pretending not to know each other in public, which meant they must have met privately somewhere to coordinate their search for her. Walter had mentioned that the shooting had happened at the hotel. Zara changed direction, heading toward the building near the train station, where most visitors to Trinidad found lodging. As she approached, she saw that a small crowd still lingered outside, held back by another deputy. The hotel's front windows were shattered, evidence of the gunfight that had occurred. Moving carefully around the perimeter of the crowd, Zara overheard fragments of conversation. "Room 8, they're saying. Blood everywhere. The big fella got away out the back. Room 8. If that had been Silas's room, he couldn't return there now, but he might have had another location somewhere he and Harker could meet privately, somewhere he could now be holding Vaughn. Zara continued past the hotel, her mind working furiously. Where would Silas go? What kind of place would he seek out? The answer came from an unexpected source. Two men emerged from an alley beside the hotel, deep in conversation. Told the manager them noises from the shed weren't his concern, one was saying. Paid him extra to keep the key and use it for private business, he said. What kind of business needs a storage shed behind a hotel? The other replied skeptically. The kind that involves women who ain't your wife, I reckon, the first man chuckled. That fella had the look of a man with secrets. The shed. Of course. Isolated, private, unlikely to be visited by hotel staff if Silas had secured exclusive use of it. It was the perfect place to hold a prisoner temporarily. Zara waited until the men had passed, then slipped into the alley they had emerged from. It ran behind the hotel, where service entrances and storage buildings created a warren of shadows in the gathering dusk. At the far end of the alley stood a small wooden structure, the shed the men had mentioned. There was no light visible from within, but as Zara crept closer, she heard a sound that confirmed her suspicions. A muffled thump, then a low groan of pain. Vaughn. The revolver was a comforting weight in her pocket as Zara approached the shed. Its door was secured with a padlock, but the single window on the side wall was slightly ajar. Standing on tiptoe, she peered inside. The interior was dim, lit only by what little daylight remained. But it was enough to see Vaughn tied to a chair in the center of the small space, his head slumped forward. Blood matted his hair on one side and his face was bruised, but the rise and fall of his chest told Zara he was alive. Silas stood before him, his back to the window. Even in profile, the sight of her husband after 3 years sent a shock of fear through Zara. He looked older, harder, the cruelty that had always lurked beneath his handsome features now openly displayed. I'll ask you one more time, Silas was saying, his voice the cold, controlled tone that Zara remembered from her worst moments with him. Where is my wife? Vaughn raised his head with visible effort. Go to hell, he said, his voice rough but defiant. Silas struck him, a backhanded blow that snapped Vaughn's head to the side. She's not worth your loyalty, you know. She's a liar, a whore. Whatever she's told you about me, about our marriage, it's all lies. I've seen the scars, Vaughn replied. I know what you did to her. I disciplined my wife when she needed it, Silas said coldly. As is my right. As for the scars, Zara was always clumsy, always falling, walking into doors. His laugh held no humor. At least, that's what she told the doctor every time. The casual cruelty of his words, the dismissal of the pain he had caused, ignited something in Zara. The fear that had defined her relationship with this man for so long began to transmute into something else. Rage. She had to get inside that shed. She had to free Vaughn before Silas tired of questioning him and decided to end things permanently. But how? The padlock on the door was sturdy, unlikely to yield to anything short of a key or a bullet. And a gunshot would alert Silas immediately, putting Vaughn in even greater danger. The window, however, might offer another way in. It was small, but so was Zara. If she could open it further without being heard. Moving silently along the wall, Zara reached up and pushed gently on the window frame. It resisted, then slid upward with a faint scrape. Inside, the conversation continued. She won't come for you, you know, Silas was saying. Zara is a survivor above all else. She'll run again rather than risk herself for anyone. You don't know her at all, Vaughn replied, earning himself another blow. I was married to her for 5 years, Silas snarled. I know exactly what kind of woman she is. The window was open wide enough now. Taking a deep breath, Zara pulled herself up and through, landing as quietly as possible on the dirt floor inside. She pressed herself against the wall, grateful for the deepening shadows that concealed her presence. Silas had his back to her still, his attention focused entirely on Vaughn. Her husband wore his gun belt, the revolver holstered at his right hip. His stance was relaxed, confident, a man who believed himself in complete control of the situation. Vaughn's eyes widened slightly as he spotted Zara over Silas's shoulder. To his credit, his expression revealed nothing else, his gaze shifting immediately back to Silas. "You're wrong about her," Vaughn said, his voice stronger now. "She's not coming for me because she's smarter than that. She's miles from here by now, beyond your reach forever." "We'll see," Silas replied. "When Harker returns with news of your friend Reed's condition, we'll decide what to do with you. Perhaps a more public display of my displeasure will draw my wayward wife out of hiding." Zara's hand closed around the revolver in her pocket. She could shoot Silas now, end this nightmare once and for all. But something held her back, not fear, but a strange reluctance to end a human life, even one as monstrous as Silas had proven himself to be. Instead, she withdrew the gun and called out, "Hello, Silas." He whirled, his hand dropping to his holster. For an instant, naked shock showed on his face as he took in the figure before him, his wife, dressed in men's clothing, a revolver pointed steadily at his chest. Then his expression shifted to something more calculated. "Zara, how good of you to join us." His voice was smooth, almost pleasant. "I've been looking for you for a very long time." "Let him go," Zara said, indicating Vaughn with a slight nod. "This is between you and me. It always has been." Silas smiled, the expression chilling in its familiarity. "Put down the gun, Zara. You and I both know you won't use it. You've never had the courage to stand up to me directly." "Things change," she replied, her voice steadier than she would have believed possible. "People change. I'm not the same woman who ran from you 3 years ago." "No." Silas took a step toward her. "You look the same to me, scared, weak, desperate." "Don't move," Zara warned, tightening her grip on the revolver. "I know what you did to Eliza Connors. I know there's a warrant for your arrest in Kansas. It's over, Silas. Even if you kill us both, you'll hang for Eliza's murder." Something flickered in Silas's eyes, uncertainty, perhaps even fear. But it was quickly replaced by the cold rage Zara knew all too well. "That interfering bitch got what she deserved," he said flatly. "Just as you will." He lunged suddenly, faster than Zara had anticipated. She fired, but the bullet went wide as Silas knocked her arm aside. The revolver clattered to the floor as they grappled, Silas's superior strength giving him the advantage despite Zara's desperate resistance. "I'm going to enjoy this," he hissed, his hands closing around her throat. "I've thought of little else for 3 years." Black spots danced at the edges of Zara's vision as Silas squeezed. She clawed at his hands, kicked at his legs, but he was immovable, his grip tightening inexorably. Then suddenly, the pressure was gone. Silas's weight disappeared as he was torn away from her. Gasping for air, Zara saw Vaughn, somehow free of his bonds, tackle Silas to the ground. The two men rolled across the dirt floor, trading blows, each fighting with the desperation of men who knew their lives depended on the outcome. Silas was taller, heavier, and uninjured. Vaughn was already wounded, weakened by whatever abuse Silas had inflicted before Zara arrived. But he fought with a ferocity born of righteous anger and protective instinct. Zara scrambled to her feet, searching frantically for the revolver. She spotted it near the door and lunged for it, just as Silas gained the upper hand in the struggle. He pinned Vaughn to the ground, hands around his throat in a mirror of what he had been doing to Zara moments before. "Stop," Zara shouted, the revolver steady in her hands once more. "Let him go, Silas, or I swear to God I'll shoot you where you stand." Silas looked up, his face contorted with rage. "You don't have the spine for it, Zara. You never did." "She doesn't have to," came a new voice from the doorway. "I do." Marcus Reed stood in the open doorway, his own gun trained on Silas. Despite the bandage visible beneath his torn shirt, his hand was rock steady. "Silas Jameson, you're under arrest for the murder of Eliza Connors," Reed continued. "Step away from that man and put your hands where I can see them." For a moment, Zara thought Silas would comply. He released Vaughn and began to straighten. Then, with the lightning quickness that had caught Zara by surprise earlier, he drew his own revolver. 3 shots rang out almost simultaneously. Silas jerked backward, red blooming on his chest in 2 places. He looked down at the wounds with an expression of almost comical surprise, then up at Zara. His lips moved, forming words she couldn't hear. Then he crumpled to the floor. Zara stood frozen, the revolver still extended. She had fired. So had Reed. One of them, perhaps both, had ended Silas's life. She should have felt something, triumph, perhaps, or relief or guilt. Instead, there was only a vast emptiness, an absence where her fear of this man had lived for so long. "Zara." Vaughn's voice, hoarse but urgent, broke through her trance. "Are you hurt?" She lowered the gun and went to him, kneeling beside him on the dirt floor. "I'm all right," she said, helping him to sit up. "You're the one who's injured." "Nothing that won't heal," he assured her, though the effort of speaking clearly cost him pain. Reed approached, holstering his own weapon. "Sheriff's on his way," he said. "I stopped by the docks to check on Harker and heard what had happened. Figured this might be where Jameson had taken you." "Good timing," Vaughn acknowledged with a grim smile. Reed glanced at Silas's still form, then at Zara. "I'm sorry it ended this way, madam. I had hoped to bring him in alive to stand trial." "Don't apologize," Zara said quietly. "He made his choice." The next few hours passed in a blur. The sheriff arrived, took statements, had Silas's body removed. Vaughn was examined by the doctor, who pronounced his injuries painful but not life-threatening, a concussion, several bruised ribs, various cuts and abrasions. Zara herself was checked for injuries to her throat, which would bear the marks of Silas's hands for days to come. It was past midnight when they were finally allowed to leave the doctor's house. Marcus Reed, despite his own wound, insisted on escorting them back to Tom's hotel. The streets of Trinidad were quiet now, the excitement of the day's events having given way to the normal stillness of a small town at night. "What happens now?" Zara asked as they walked, her arm linked with Vaughn's partly to support him, partly because she couldn't bear to be separated from him even by inches. "Now you're free," Vaughn said simply. "Free to do whatever you want, go wherever you want." "The murder warrant will be officially closed," Reed added. "You won't have to testify or appear in court. As far as the law is concerned, this case is finished." They reached the hotel, where Tom himself was waiting despite the late hour. He showed them to a large corner room on the 2nd floor, a proper room with a real bed, not the bare-bones accommodation Vaughn had initially secured. "On the house," Tom insisted when Vaughn tried to pay. "Least I can do." After Reed and Tom had left, Zara and Vaughn stood looking at each other in the lamplight, both overwhelmed by the events of the day and the sudden absence of the threat that had driven them together. "You came for me," Vaughn said softly, wonder in his voice. "You could have run. You should have run, but you came into that shed knowing what Silas was capable of." "Of course I did," Zara replied. "How could I not? You've risked everything for me from the moment we met." "I failed you today," he said, self-recrimination in his tone. "I didn't see him coming. He recognized me from the saloon, followed me after I met with Reed at the station. I should have been more careful." "You're alive," Zara said firmly. "I'm alive. Silas can never hurt either of us again. That's not failure, Vaughn, that's victory. He reached for her then, drawing her into an embrace that was gentle despite his injuries. They stood that way for a long moment, holding each other, breathing in the simple fact of their survival. "What do you want to do now?" Vaughn asked eventually. "Where do you want to go?" Zara pulled back slightly to look into his eyes. "I don't know," she admitted. "For so long, my only goal was to keep running to stay ahead of Silas. I never allowed myself to think beyond that." "You could go back to Missouri," Vaughn suggested. "Reconnect with your family." "Or I could stay in Trinidad," Zara countered. "Mrs. Peterson has offered me a partnership in the millinery shop. She has no children to inherit the business. You'd be good at that, perhaps." Zara took a deep breath. "But there's a third option. One I've been considering since this morning when I woke up beside you in that cabin and felt at home. In a way I haven't since I was a girl." Vaughn's expression softened. "What option is that?" "I could go with you," she said simply. "Wherever you go next, if you'll have me." For a moment, Vaughn looked stunned. Then a slow smile spread across his face, transforming it despite the bruises and cuts. "Are you proposing to me, Zara Jameson?" She laughed, the sound startling her when had she last laughed freely without fear. "I suppose I am. Though it's terribly forward of me." "Forward suits you," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And yes, I'll have you if you're sure. My life isn't settled. I move around helping women in situations like yours. It's not an easy path." "I'm sure," Zara said. "After everything that's happened, I know what I want. Who I want. The rest we can figure out together." Vaughn kissed her then, a kiss that held promise and tenderness, and the certainty of a future neither of them had dared to imagine days before. That night, as Zara lay beside Vaughn in the hotel bed, listening to his steady breathing as he slept, she thought about the strange path that had led her here. 3 days ago, she had been a woman living in fear, defined by her past, with no real hope for her future. Now she was free not just from Silas, but from the prison of fear he had built around her heart. Vaughn stirred beside her. "You're thinking too loudly," he murmured, his eyes still closed. Zara smiled in the darkness. "Sorry, just processing everything." He reached for her hand, interlacing their fingers. "Regrets? None," she replied truthfully, "just gratitude and hope." "Hope is good," he said, pulling her closer. "Sleep now. Tomorrow is the first day of the rest of our lives." As Zara drifted toward sleep in the circle of Vaughn's arms, she allowed herself to truly believe those words. Tomorrow would be a new beginning. And for the first time in years, she looked forward to it without fear. Epilogue. 1 year later, the small house on the outskirts of Denver caught the late afternoon sun, its freshly painted white clapboards and blue shutters gleaming. In the front yard, late summer flowers nodded in the breeze, their colors bright against the green of the carefully tended lawn. Zara Holloway, for she was Zara Holloway now, had been for 11 months stood on the porch, watching the road for signs of her husband's return. Vaughn had been gone for 2 weeks this time, accompanying Marcus Reed to Nebraska to help a young woman escape an abusive father. It was the longest they had been separated since their marriage, and Zara had found herself counting the days until his return with an eagerness that made her smile at herself. So much had changed in a year. After leaving Trinidad, they had traveled first to Kansas to visit Eliza Connor's grave, allowing Zara to say a proper goodbye to the woman who had helped save her life. Then they had journeyed to Missouri, where Zara had reconnected with her parents, introducing them to Vaughn and explaining, as gently as possible, what had happened during her marriage to Silas. Her father had wept, blaming himself for not seeing Silas's true nature before giving his blessing to their marriage. Her mother had simply held Zara for a long time, apologizing for not being there when Zara needed her most. The reunion had been both painful and healing, laying to rest years of separation and misunderstanding. From Missouri, they had traveled to Denver, where Marcus Reed had offered Vaughn a position with the Pinkerton Agency, specifically working on cases involving domestic violence. The position allowed Vaughn to continue his mission of helping women in danger, but with the resources and legal authority of the agency behind him. Zara, meanwhile, had found her own calling. Drawing on her experiences and the knowledge she had gained during her years of running and hiding, she had begun working with a women's aid society in Denver, helping other women escape abusive situations. She taught them practical skills: how to create new identities, how to avoid leaving trails, how to protect themselves physically if necessary. But more importantly, she offered them understanding and hope, showing by her very existence that survival and even happiness were possible after escaping violence. The sound of hoofbeats drew her attention back to the road. A rider appeared, silhouetted against the setting sun. Even at a distance, Zara would have known Vaughn's straight-backed posture, the particular way he sat a horse. Her heart quickened as it always did at the sight of him. He dismounted in front of the house, his face breaking into a smile as he saw her waiting. Despite the dust of travel, despite the weariness evident in the set of his shoulders, he looked to Zara exactly as he had that first day in Trinidad: strong, determined, and utterly trustworthy. "Welcome home," she called, descending the porch steps to meet him. "It's good to be home," he replied, pulling her into an embrace that told her more clearly than words how much he had missed her. When they separated, Zara took his hand and placed it gently on her abdomen, which had just begun to show the slightest curve. "We have news," she said softly. Vaughn's eyes widened, then filled with a joy so pure it brought tears to Zara's eyes. "A baby," he whispered, his voice reverent. "You're certain?" Dr. Williams confirmed it yesterday. "We're expecting a child in early spring." Vaughn gathered her close again, his hand remaining protectively over her stomach. "I love you," he said against her hair. "Both of you." "And we love you," Zara replied, her heart so full it seemed impossible that she had ever known emptiness. That night, as they lay together in their bed, Vaughn's hand resting on her belly as if to reassure himself that their child was real, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From terror to safety, from isolation to connection, from despair to hope. "What are you thinking?" Vaughn asked, noticing her contemplative silence. "About how completely my life has changed," she answered honestly. "A little more than a year ago, I was terrified that Silas would find me sleeping, that he would finally succeed in killing me. And then you appeared, guarding my door until dawn. And nothing was ever the same again. You saved yourself," Vaughn reminded her gently. "You were already running, already fighting to survive long before I came along." "Yes," she acknowledged, "but you showed me it was possible to do more than just survive. You helped me learn to live again. To trust again, to love again." He kissed her then, a kiss that held all the tenderness and passion that had grown between them over the past year. When they parted, Vaughn said, "That goes both ways, you know. Before I met you, I was just a man with a mission. Important work, yes, but lonely. Empty in many ways. You gave me a home, Zara, a family, a heart." As they drifted toward sleep, Zara thought about the women she was helping now, women who were where she had been, afraid, isolated, desperate. She thought about the message she tried to impart to each of them, that the darkness does not last forever, that survival is possible, that healing, though difficult and non-linear, does come, that love, when it is true and kind and respectful, can transform even the deepest wounds into sources of strength. Outside their window, the stars wheeled slowly across the Colorado sky. Inside, Zara and Vaughn Holloway slept peacefully in each other's arms, their child growing between them, a new life born from the ashes of fear, a testament to the resilience of the human heart and its capacity for renewal. In the morning, Zara knew, they would wake to continue the life they were building together. There would be challenges, certainly. Vaughn's work would still take him away sometimes. The memories of the past would not disappear entirely. But they would face whatever came together, with the strength they had found in each other and the love that had blossomed in the most unlikely of circumstances. And Zara would never again be afraid to sleep, knowing that even when Vaughn was physically absent, the safety and trust they had built together remained, a fortress stronger than any walls, more enduring